What's up, gamers? NanMan here with another podcast episode of NanMan's Nerd Corner. How have y'all been? We've missed you. Well, I've missed you. Our co-host still unable to join us for this one, but that's okay. We had a big hiatus for the podcast and have been doing a big surge and push over on YouTube. If you're not familiar, we've got two YouTube channels, youtube.com/NanMan's Nerd Corner or just at NanMan's Nerd Corner. And then, of course, that's all the magic and, you know, the podcast is held there. And then we've got youtube.com/NanMan or at NanMan, NanMan. Very easy, simple. And that's all the RTS content because there's a lot of RTS stuff going on right now, which we'll talk about later on in the show when we talk about what we're playing and what we're watching, what we're doing, all that fun stuff. But this is the Pro Tour Mh3 recap podcast episode. So we wanted to get in and kind of break things down, talk about things. We do have a co-host episode coming up. It's in the works. We're trying to schedule dates that work out best for both of our schedules because we are going to be talking about the One Piece TCG because things are really popping off with that. Still popping off with that, I should say. So things are looking really cool. So we're working through that side of things. We're going to be, recording that. We've been playing that. I'm going to be going and playing in a couple of tournaments coming up for One Piece TCG as well as modern tournaments for Magic. So lots of stuff happening. So let's get into it and talk a little bit about the Pro Tour now. So Pro Tour Mh3, we got to see information breakdown of deck lists and all the kind of fact sheets, if you will, here are the numbers, right? Here's the Pro Tour by numbers. Who won, all that kind of stuff. Everybody knows now at this point Nadu was the boogeyman of the format. People have kind of referred to it similar to like Hogak Summer or Eldrazi Winter. It was really crazy. And it was on pretty much everybody's radar going into it, right? People have been talking about it on Twitter. People have been playing it on MTG Online. The deck was not like surprise out of nowhere. This deck just won, where it felt more like Eldrazi Winter was a more of that surprise. This is the best deck and completely warped the format afterward. I mean, the Eldrazi Winter had 6 of the top 8 being Eldrazi, and then winning the whole thing. The other, of course, was Affinity back in the day. And then it exploded and everybody was like, oh my God, this is just insane about how efficient with Eye of Ugin and Eldrazi Temple, and you could just be able to cheat out your cards. Here's a Mimic, here's a Thought-Knot Seer, here's a Reality Smasher, and just swing in for 10 damage on turn 3. It was very explosive and very powerful. Of course, got banned, Eye of Ugin, and then the deck fell off and everything like that. Hogak was similar explosiveness in its win rate, and everybody understood just how good that deck was. And then it became, hey, if you're not playing Hogak, you're doing it wrong. And they tried to ban Bridge from Below leading up to or after the event. Didn't change the deck at all. Ended up banning Hogak. And eventually we got to see more bans take place, but they did let's try to ban the pieces, let's then ban the problem. And so a lot of people are very nervous and about the Nadu thing and thinking, okay, will Wizards do an emergency ban? Will they step in and ban the pieces like Shuko, the 0 cost equipment? Well, it costs 1 to play but 0 to equip, which is the enabler for the Nadu effect. Or will they just ban the bird outright? Are we going to have another Hogak situation or not? So a lot of speculation going on in that side of things. I have the deck. I've played the deck. The deck's a lot of fun. It is very solitary goldfish because there is that non-0% chance that you could fizzle. It's very, very unlikely and very difficult. I play the Thassa's Oracle version personally because I want to have a win con. I also play a couple extra islands in my list just to help and guarantee that I can cast Thassa's Oracle if it's in my hand, and I have ways to go about it that way. So there's that kind of non-0% chance that you could fizzle. For the most part, it doesn't. I did play a match against a burn deck and just got burned out before I could combo, which sometimes happens. But for the most part, you could speed it up and win as quickly as turn 3. We got to see that at the Pro Tour. But let's talk about like the numbers and stuff like that. Let's go through the breakdown of things for this episode. Then we'll talk more about the actual lists and stuff like that. So the biggest thing to note going into like the first day, right? Friday's win rates, which was very interesting to see, is the number 1 deck, which was going into it, like 49 decks or so were playing Bant Nadu, about 20% of the field. It had a 58% win rate, which is very, very, very powerful. Especially for such a dominating deck, and you're basically seeing it so much, which again, we talked about how the Pro Tour, a lot of teams come out early, they grind, they test, they all decide on, this is what I want to play, this is the best deck. Now, there was multiple decks above the 50% win rate, some even higher than Bant Nadu in win rates, just not as many decks there. So let's talk about the other high win rate decks besides Bant Nadu, because we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the Nadu. The highest win rate was Mono Black Grief. Grief still proving to be extremely powerful in every format that it's legal in. Modern, it's warping Legacy completely. We're not going to talk too much about that, but that's, for any Legacy fans out there, that is one of those things that you're like, well, I guess unless I'm playing Grief, I'm doing it wrong in Legacy because of how scary it is. But even in Modern, it's still scary, right? They tried to, that's the other thing. It's like last Pro Tour, or the Lord of the Rings Pro Tour, we had the Rakdos scam crush and dominate, and then it just kind of took over even more so than any other deck in a long time. And kind of like, hey, if you're not doing it, you're doing it wrong. Fury was eventually banned from it. Grief still exists. You can still play Scam. We see the Mono Black Scam list as one of those decks that exists. So 59% win rate. It's just very efficient with the tools that it's got, stripping away cards, being disruptive, so very strong, very powerful. So that was the number 1 highest win rate deck on Friday. Then, we had, 55%. We had 2 decks at 55%. Oh, I guess Nadu. 4-color Nadu. The ones that ran black for Orcish Bowmasters and Sheldreds and things like that. You could, that's... Sure, that's the same thing as Nadu. We had a lot of Nadu. Over 50 decks in there were Nadu. But the other one that was 50 was our Boros Energy. Just the fast, efficient, red, white, get out the gate, swarm, go wide, powerful deck. 55% win rate. I mean, aggro decks can be able to sneak in and burst your opponent down before they're able to kind of set up and assemble the stuff that they need. So that was cool to be able to see Boros Energy do very well for the first day. Gruul Eldrazi was also in there. I'm assuming that was like the Through the Breach list that players were running. There's about 6 players running this Gruul Eldrazi. It's like a Through the Breach lines. 53% win rate with that, so very good. Again, the kind of explosive, I could just ramp up and be able to start dropping down Eldrazi's on you, and can you deal with this? No? All right, guess I win. Speaking of Eldrazi, we also had Eldrazi Tron there, 51% win rate. It's the new version of Tron. We talked about it in some of the videos on the YouTube. It basically turns into more of a prison-style deck with Trinisphere and Chalice of the Voids, things like that. And then you're going to be kind of pivoting off there into some of the new Eldrazi's and ramping up from there. So very cool. I played it a couple times. I like it a lot. It is extremely toolboxy with artifacts. So if you like that style of things, you've got some... of course, Eldrazi shenanigans that you can be able to do. It's a lot of fun. I have not updated my Tron list to it yet. I've just borrowed some other players' lists and piloted them a couple of times. But there's the lands I'm missing because I only pulled one and I didn't buy singles for those. I bought singles for other decks, so haven't picked up the lands and some of the Eldrazi and other pieces I'm missing for it. But the Tron list is cool to see updated like this. The other big win deck, and the other one that I feel like very likely will have something else banned besides the Nadu stuff, is our Mono Black Necro. You guys got to see that at the Pro Tour, especially if you watched any of the live coverage of the events. Of course, we did some restream of it and rebroadcast up, so you could be able to watch some of that. But the Mono Black Necro, very, very powerful. You basically just go, okay, here's my Necro Dominance. I will now draw a bunch of cards, exile these cards from my hand, and start burning you down. It's like a burn deck that just draws your whole deck. Is very strong, very powerful, very hard to disrupt and blow out. Once they start going, it's very hard to stop them. So it's like that one had 54% win rate. So a lot of decks above that 50% win rate there. So very cool to see. I mean, we've talked about it, like the Pro Tour meta is a bit of an indication of what the meta for Modern is going to be. But it's also like a very niche, narrow focus of it because of, things like these pros are specifically putting in cards for their decks, putting in, cards that will deal with specific decks that they're going to see from their testing information. Like, I don't know. It's one of those tricky ones, right? So I think it's a good indication, though, of the way to look at it is if we looked at the Modern meta overall for this, right? 20% of the field brought Nadu. All right. The next highest percentage was Ruby Storm, and that was only about 9%. And the Ruby Storm players just got destroyed. They had 33% win rate. So they would do very well probably game one and then just get blown out post-board, especially where players are teching specifically to deal with the deck, like running Drannith Magistrate and things like that says, hey, all those cards that you're exiling that you're expecting to play, you are no longer able to play. So that, one of the ways to kind of shut that down. Jeskai Control was also up there with the 9%. So, that was very cool to see. The control list was very cool. I don't know. A lot of those lists were running a very small land count, like 22. And a lot of the coverage that I saw with very skilled players were sitting on 3 lands, just desperately hoping to rip a 4th land or draw into a 4th land, and they would sit and dig and go like 2 turns in a row without hitting one and start to fall behind and not be able to stabilize because they missed that turning point for them to be able to do that switch and go, okay, let's go, let's wipe the board, let's be able to kind of pivot off of here. So I would, if I ran it, I would probably run a 61 card list and just run 23 lands. I don't know. I'm all in on 61 cards in all of my Modern decks at this point in time. It doesn't matter what it is. I just run 61. I feel comfortable with doing it. It's just kind of my way of doing things. I'm also not a pro, so I don't have to sit here and crunch the numbers about the percentages of me, missing out on a draw because I've added 61 cards and stuff. But anyway, the Jeskai control lists are very cool. I like seeing those. Jeskai Wizard was another one that was very cool. I have the Is It Wizard. Jeskai makes a lot of sense because you're adding in the board wipe effects and stuff like that. But so let's talk about, the difference in meta breakdown, right? 20% was the Nadu. If we really count the 4-color in there as well, it's essentially about 25% of the meta. The Lord of the Rings meta, all right, Rakdos Evoke, Rakdos Scam, whatever you'd like to call it, was 19%. So still very, very close to that 20% that Nadu is at, or 25, but still less than that. Where the second most 4-color Omnath, about 11%. And then, of course, our Rhinos deck, the Cascade effects were about 10% of the meta. So you look at it, I don't want to say it was healthier, because playing during that time, the decks were doing stuff that were very difficult to deal with. It was just like, well, okay, I guess you just now have your Rhinos out. Okay, I guess you just stripped my hand and I kept a 7-card hand, but oh, just kidding, I have 5 cards now. Or, oh, you blew up my board with your Fury and now have this double striker on turn 2 or turn 1 that you're swinging in on turn 2 for, 6 damage or, more, depending on if you have the counters on it or the, different ways to bring it back. So it was very, very strong of a deck. The format, health-wise, a deck should not be reaching 20% of the meta with everything else trickling in below it. We understand that. So something is going to get banned from Nadu. That makes a lot of sense. All right, something was banned from Rakdos Evoke when it was about 20%, and we saw Fury gone. So it makes sense why that is going to be the case. I want to see Shuko gone, and let's talk about that a little bit more of why I would rather see Shuko gone instead of the bird itself. So Nadu the Winged Wisdom is a 3-cost, 1 green and a blue, 3/4 flying bird wizard. Having 4 toughness makes it much harder to kill. You can't lightning bolt it and things like that. It's you have to jump through some more hoops to be able to do it. But creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand. This ability triggers only twice each turn per creature. So when you are able to combo this with the ability to make more creatures each turn on landfall effects, you can just go infinite, essentially. But how do you do that? How do you continue to trigger Nadu? Well, a lot of people first were thinking about, oh, okay, I'll just cast it with some free spells or target it with spells. And then they go, oh, have you heard about this equipment from Kamigawa? It's Shuko, a 1-cost equipment that you can equip for 0, and the equipped creature gets +1/+0. Awesome. I can just infinitely do this. Keep moving it around. It triggers twice each turn, so each creature you can go, all right, I'll equip this Shuko once. Let's reveal a top card. It's a land. Sweet. Goes to the battlefield. I'll equip this creature a second time. Oh, it's not a land. It goes to my hand. All right, now I'll equip the next creature, right? And so on and so forth. That's how this works. You are going to be running other redundancies in the list to kind of help you with that type effect. There is a creature that does the same type of thing, Outrider and Core. It's a 3-cost, 2/2 Core Rebel Knight with flanking. If you don't remember what flanking is, which most people probably don't because flanking doesn't really come up. But whenever a creature without flanking blocks this creature, the blocking creature gets -1/-1 until the end of turn. That line of text is not relevant to what the deck does. What is relevant is the 0-cost effect is the next 1 damage that would be dealt to Outrider and Core this turn is dealt to target creature you control instead. Remember, Nadu is going to be triggering on abilities, not just spells. So that's why Shuko works. That's why our Outrider and Core works. So the deck is a toolbox deck. You sit there, well, kind of a toolbox deck. It runs Summoner's Pact, Chords of Callings to be able to tutor up the creatures that you need. It also has access to things like Urza's Saga, which will help you get Shuko. Like it's very good at being able to find the pieces that it needs to combo off, and we saw it many times at the Pro Tour be able to just kind of win and explode and go off on turn 3. A lot of those lists had stripped out Thassa's Oracle because they're being like, well, you don't need it to win because you can eventually do enough loops with your endurance, with your Ottawaras, with your ability to strip away your opponent's cards and bounce them all to basically lock them out of the game and then kill them on the following turn with all of your insects that you're creating, because you get to go infinite off of this other creature called Springheart Nantuko. It's a bestow insect monk. It's very cool. You can just decide not to bestow it and turn it on like as an aura, or you can have it as a regular just creature. The creature gets +1/+1, but the text that matters is the landfall text. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you can pay 2 mana if it's bestowed and create a copy of that creature, which I have done before. It's very cool. It's awesome. I made a bunch of copies of Wall of Roots at one point and was just like, yeah, I'm gonna have a bunch of mana and a bunch of blockers. Seems cool. Or if you don't pay the mana for it, you then get to create 1/1 green insect tokens, which, remember, Nadu matters for every creature gets to trigger this twice. So when you keep playing lands off of Nadu's ability onto the battlefield, then you get to say, oh, landfall trigger, I'm going to make an insect. Now that insect can be equipped with Shuko or targeted with Outrider and Core, and I can just continue and go. So it's really like it's a 3-card combo to go infinite. Eventually you should be able to, if you don't have Springheart and Tuco out and you just have your Shuko or your Outrider and your Nadu, you have a very good chance of being able to hit a Springheart Nantuko and 2 lands to be able to cast it and just go. There is that chance you could fizzle. It's very, very small, very small. So I would much rather see Shuko get banned here than Nadu. And I'll explain my reasoning and my logic behind it, because you're probably sitting here going, why? We went through this with Hogak and it didn't work then. It's not going to work now. You might be right, but I would love to see some more attempts and more tests with it, as players can maybe adapt more if that's the case, because we have tools available that we can be able to use to kind of help us deal with activated abilities or deal with cards that players might play that they feel like, oh, this is going to work out very, very well in these types of situations. Things like Pithing Needle is one of those cards, right? It's, you just name a card, the activated abilities of that card cannot be activated. There's new tools now with things like Disruptor Flute, right? Disruptor Flute enters the battlefield, choose a card name. Spells of the chosen name cost 3 more to cast. Activated abilities of sources with the chosen name can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. So we have tools that people could do, especially with the fact that if you get rid of Shuko, the 1-cost artifact that can be found off of Urza Saga, like, it's essentially like having 8 copies in the deck. Right? When we think about it like that, you can either draw Shuko naturally, or you have this land that just automatically will put it onto the battlefield for you. So it does the same thing that we're worried about. Outrider and Core costs 3 mana to play. Nadu costs 3 mana to play. Springheart and Tuco, 2 mana to play. Really, you probably have a Springheart out or an Outrider out, and then you're going to play your Nadu, or vice versa, right? So it's going to take more time and more turns to set up to do this and slow it down that way. Also, Outrider is a 2/2. Dies to Bolt. All right, it's a 3-cost. Doesn't really die to Fatal Push unless you jump through some hoops, but it's a little bit easier to kill with a big asterisk to it, right? It's still going to be scary and still going to be powerful, but it's going to force players to adapt and adjust their lists more than what they were. I think that is worth testing and worth trying. Give players a chance to adapt and see, oh, okay, the Nadu list is scary. It's explosive in this current iteration, but it has the potential to be powerful and a deck within Modern, but maybe not a 20% of the field, a 58% win rate, if we start stripping some of the tools away from it. I feel like the Outrider and Course is the safer of the two if we're going to attempt to see it in that type of play of, hey, try it this way. All right, let's try it. Now, the RCQ or tournament grind is going to be kicking off in August for Modern. People are speculating emergency ban before then. I don't know. I don't think that's going to be happening. I don't think we're at that stage. There's not enough tournament events happening before then to make the need for it, right? The Pro Tour's done and over with. We don't have SCG Modern events every weekend. We don't have big Grand Prix, every month, every couple of weeks. Like, it's the tournament scene for Magic is very different now than during the Hogak time or before then, right? Even before then, really, the Eldrazi winter times. And, the Modern Horizons 1 it was a very different tournament scene in the amount of games that could be played in 2019 compared to 2024 Magic. So something will be banned from Nadu. We know that. But I'm pushing to get rid of Shuko. I think Shuko is worth getting rid of. Say goodbye. We don't need it. It's fine. Let's make players jump through more hoops and give players more chances to set up a response to this combo than what they can do currently with how fast Shuko can get online. Right? You play a Mana Dork on turn 1. You could play your Nadu as early as turn 2 if you really wanted to. But it's like, all right, turn 1, Mana Dork, pass. Turn 2, Shuko, land, pass. Turn 3, go. Right? Turn 3 wins are pretty scary. I've always liked to report back to like the old days of Splinter Twins and things like that, or like we want to have a turn 4 format for Modern, and clearly that has proven not to be true over the years with Modern Horizons being printed. But I don't know. There's plenty of cards they can unban Splinter Twin. It's not good in the current form of meta. People will be happy to see it back. It won't matter in the long run. There's too much disruptions and ways to kill that combo. So let's see about disrupting this combo by getting rid of Shuko instead of Nadu. That's my take on it. Will it happen? I don't know. There's other players. The pro scene a little bit different than just the weeklies and the LGS side of things that I'm currently at right now. Going to be playing in a couple of bigger events in the fall, but as of right now, we're just kind of more focused on the kind of local scene, watching the pros, doing stuff like that. We're not grinding as hard as we did back in the day when we were going to GPs and things like that. So that's one of the things to think about is the ban to Shuko. The Mono Black Necro dominant stuff, that's a scary deck. It's very strong. I mean, Soul Spike is a card that was printed in Cold Snap. All right. Beginning of June, it's like $4. It is currently, for one of these, $120. Right? So let that sink in. It's more expensive than the One Ring that has been skyrocketing in price and sitting at $107 right now. So this card, it costs 7 mana. You may exile 2 black cards from your hand rather than pay its cost, and it deals 4 damage to any target, and you gain 4 life. That's where we talked about how the Mono Black Necro is a burn deck, because you have cards like that. You have cards like March of the Wretched Sorrow, which you exile cards from your hand. You deal X damage to target creature or planeswalker and gain X life. That can't kill an opponent. You can kill creatures with it, but it's the Soul Spike that is the one that's dealing the damage and killing off your opponent, right? You're just like, all right, cool. Let's just kind of blast them, right? So anyway, I started blasting, and then I get Sheldred out, and I just win. All right? I just drain you down low enough, have a Sheldred, pass turn, you die from drawing cards. All right? Seems pretty good. I don't know what they would strip from this. Like, I don't know. Is like if you get rid of Soul Spike, the deck kind of falls apart a bit. I don't know if that's the route that they're going to take with it if they end up banning something from it. It's harder for you to interact with this deck compared to other decks, right? Because it's like, all right, I guess you could have some enchantment rule, but even then, it's like there's 4 copies of Necrodominance. You skip your draw step at the beginning of your end step, you can pay any amount of life. If you do, draw that many cards. So, like, your opponent doesn't really have a chance to respond. But I'll pay this amount of life and draw that many cards, right? Because it's not like it's an activated ability to do that, so your opponent can't respond. It's part of the like effect on the card, right? Of course, your hand size is 5. That doesn't matter. You're just going to be drawing like your whole deck and shooting him with Soul Spike. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with the deck. It's very strong. It's very powerful. The meta is in a weird state, and it's supposed to be, right? After a set comes out. After a set comes out like this, it's supposed to change and fluctuate, and we want that to happen. I don't know what's going to happen post-banning, because we know something's going to happen. The next ban list is in August, so we'll be kind of diving in and talking more about that more then. But yeah, the Pro Tour was very fun to watch, to see things. It was nice to kind of understand how the Nadu deck worked, because I had heard about it. I had seen some of the Magic Online stuff, but seeing it from the pro perspective of like, what cards are they prioritizing tutoring for or protecting themselves with, or how are they going to get out of this situation when things aren't going well? Like that was very interesting to be able to see. The Mardu energy was very fun to watch. I liked watching that more than the Boros energy personally. Goryo's Vengeance did very well. I think it went like 10-0 or something like that at the Pro Tour, like undefeated almost for one of the lists, but didn't do so well in some of the other like draft sides, so we didn't get to see too much of it. Also never got on camera for whatever reason, so at least for when I was watching on day 2. Not saying it didn't on day 1, but Buried Alive, of course, helped that deck out quite a bit. You get to be able to throw some of your tools into the graveyard. It's a cool deck. We'll see what happens. Goryo's Vengeance, Ruby Storm, like there's like Living End. There's decks that it's like they do well when there's not as much hate for them. The more players are prepared for it, the less powerful those decks are. They're easier to deal with. All right, so we can kind of deal with it that way. I'm very excited about the Gruul Prowess list from there. I've been meaning to pick up the other tools that I need for this. Like, okay, well, here's some scale ups, and we're gonna just kind of turn these guys sideways and kill you. All right. So that was cool to see the bosses list there. What was his name? Brian Boss had this. He went 6-4, almost made the top 8 there, but was rocking some of the old school Infect pump spells. Blossoming Defense was in there, Mutagenic Growth, and Scale Up, but he ran double strike effects. Assault, Strobe, target creature gains double strike until the end of turn. He was running things like Monstrous Rage, target creature gets +2/+0, and gets that monstrous roll, which gives it +1, and Trample, and then of course Legion's Leadership until end of turn. Target double target creature's power, and it gains first strike. There's like your goal is to be able to just go, okay, here's a slick shot show off. Let's be able to scale it up. Let's pump them up. Let's do these things and just kind of go. Turn sideways and just win. All right, it's like people are referring to it as, it's kind of like the more efficient and effective Infect, because Infect can't really hold its own in today's day and age. I'll play it every now and again, I will, but it's very hard to win in today's meta. So yeah, I mean, I'm very happy with the way that meta is shaping up. I want to see some changes done. I want to see some bans. I'm on camp ban Shuko over the bird first. I'm fine with seeing, a couple months I mean, what do we see? I think last time with the Hogak, they banned it soon after, so maybe that's what they're worried about. I don't think it's the same situation, though. With how efficient Hogak was, where this one you have to jump through some more hoops. Yeah, you have things like Summoner's Pact and Court of Calling, so it's easier. But even in that case, you have to commit your just like mana dorks and ramp to get to that point to be able to do it. I feel like it's okay. I don't know. Maybe not. I haven't tested in a world without Shuko. Maybe we can get some players to start testing it and seeing. Worth finding out, at least, I feel like. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with it. We'll, of course, do some more videos and talk about that. But that's kind of our Pro Tour side of things. We wanted to kind of get in there and be able to talk about it and break down decks and numbers for everybody to be able to see. So let's talk a little bit about how we end our episode of what are we playing, what are we watching, what are we doing outside of the normal topics that we're discussing here. So the big one is I've picked up a couple of new games to be playing, one of which been having a lot of fun with. Actually, I've been playing a lot of games this summer, guys. Been making a lot of content, playing a lot of games. It's been a lot of fun. So the first things that we've been doing is there's a new RTS out. I'm putting up a couple of content videos for that and footage for that, so you guys can be able to see that. It's Battle Aces. It's kind of like if you ever played Warcraft 3 custom game Footmen Frenzy. It's kind of like that. It's an RTS, but your units build instantly. You only have one building that you can produce everything from. It's set up as your main base, your command center, over by your mineral patches. You don't have to build workers. Once you build this base, it automatically populates workers. If your workers die, it'll automatically repopulate them after a set time. If you expand, it plops down a base and will automatically put on those workers, so you don't have to worry about it. And it's very, very cool, very fun. It's designed where you get to see what units I have access to, and I get to see what units you have access to. We've picked these units before the game starts. Once the game starts, I can press a button and see exactly what units you have, what units I have, at least in what we can produce. There's Fog of War, so you have to scout and get information about where your opponent's army is, but, that's kind of the way to do the RTS side of things. But it's can be very fast paced. You can be very defensive with it. It's been a lot of fun to learn. Played a bit of the 1v1 side of things. 2v2s are a blast. I've been having so much fun. There's like this big Kraken in there that's like in 2v2s, and as long as you're playing the Kraken, you're pretty much winning. I saw a clip of somebody that they had 2 Krakens, their teammate had 2 Krakens, and they just kind of like, all right, we're just going to turtle up and hope our Krakens get there. The Krakens cost like 3,000, so of your 2 resources that you've got. So it takes a bit. You got to kind of go to the long game to get there. But Battle Ace is a lot of fun. They're in closed beta right now. So if you want access to the beta, you have a chance to sign up for it. Playbattleaces.com. Not a sponsor, but we'll happily take some free keys if they want to give it to us. So Battle Aces beta is up. It's a lot of fun. I can't wait to see where they go with it. Another RTS in the scene. Awesome. Stormgate's coming out soon at the end of the month. But, so we've been put in about 5 hours or so of that. I've been seeing a lot of pro RTS players or streamers in the RTS scene that have been putting a lot of hours into it. Just started playing the 2v2s, and I've been having the most fun with it, and I'll probably play a lot more of the 2v2s over anything else there. The other one that I've been playing a lot of is Ghost of Tsushima. Just came to the PC in beginning of the summer here. I've put in 26 hours in this game so far. Just finished Act 1, been having a blast. It's been a long time since I've played a single-player epic story game like this. I played like the Batman games back in the day, like the Arkham Asylums and things like that. But I'm more of a multiplayer or RTS gamer. So I don't often find a game that I sit down and go, I'm going to play this single player game and just kind of enjoy the story and do this. And so it's been amazing. Visually, it's beautiful. The world is great. The mechanics are great. I mean, a lot of the people that have had access to the game for the longest time on console know this. So I'm not telling you new information, but I have been loving it. I'm going to continue to play through this. It might take me a while to beat it. I'll put in a couple hours every couple of weeks here. It's like I think I did 5 hours in the last 2 weeks of just kind of like, all right, let's play for a bit and then kind of back off a bit and then play for a bit, right? The other game that I have put in even more hours than Ghost of Tsushima, which I put in about 26, has been Baldur's Gate 3. I pulled the trigger. I missed out on it last year because it came out right as the school year started, and school year going on, being a full-time teacher, it's very difficult to be able to commit some of the time that I wanted to play the game. So I said I cannot do it. I'll wait until this summer, and I pulled the trigger. I have played, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 days worth, and 29 hours in those 5 days. So loving it. Still in Act 1, if you're wondering about it. I've been playing through. So here's how I've viewed this. I've done Ghost of Tsushima is my single player game. If I want to play a solo game when I'm not making content, recording videos, editing, doing that, and I just was like, end of the night, I feel like I've put in the work related to content creation that I wanted to. Here's Ghost of Tsushima. I'll play the single player. If I want to play a multiplayer experience, I will play Baldur's Gate. So I have multiple playthroughs with multiple friends. Here's our 4-player game that we've got. I'll play this character and that one. I can't even remember. It's like I have so many games going right now on Baldur's Gate that I'm having a hard time remembering, because we played the 4-player game right at the start, and then one of our buddies went out of town for the month, and we can't play that game until he gets back into town. I want to say I'm a rogue. I'm a tiefling rogue in that one. So we just started that one. Very fun. If you played it, we just kind of dealt with the goblins attacking the grove for the first time, the druid grove. So we were like, okay, cool. We just made it to that point. Felt like a good stopping point. We'll stop there. The next playthrough that I picked, I did a bard who is it's a drow bard who's multi-classing in ranger. Decided to test out the multi classing stuff for that playthrough. I thought it'd be fun to try. Let's see how it would be if I start multi-classing. The next one that I'm doing is this is the one that I'm furthest in, that I'm continuing to play with one of my other buddies. So 2-player game with 2 NPCs on us. I'm playing as a Dragonborn monk, and the monk is a lot of fun. I've been having a blast. I mean, they were always super powerful and strong in D&D outside of Baldur's Gate games. So like the actual tabletop RPG side. So being able to, because I've been in games where other players have played monks and just watch how OP they are. Of like, yeah, I'll spend this key point and just flurry of blows and just punch this person to death. Oh, I'll spend another key point and do this next. And like, they truck people. So it's been fun to be able to play that. We're the furthest along in there. We've just got to the Underdark. So it's been very cool to start diving in. And, each playthrough we're finding different stuff that's happening. The last playthrough that I'm doing with another buddy is I'm playing as a halfling druid, and he's playing, I think, as like a gnome or something. We both decided to be tiny people, so we could go into all the little cracks and crevices that I was finding in my other games, going, oh, you're too big to fit here. It's like, well, I'm fitting into every single spot in this playthrough, right? That's kind of been my goal, is each time that I play with a different group, I'm hoping for a new experience. I'm hoping to see different things. we've discovered more people, more interactions. It's been very fun and very cool to be able to play and experience for the first time, and doing it with other people feels more meaningful than just doing a single player. I think eventually I will do a single player, but for now I'm enjoying Ghost of Tsushima as my single player experience, Baldur's Gate as my multiplayer, and then when I'm feeling competitive, I've got Battle Aces. For right now, at the end of the month, Stormgate is coming out. I'm going to put a lot of content into Stormgate, so you'll be seeing some more content coming out on the other RTS YouTube channel. Of course, there's Zero Space, Mortal Gates of Pyre, Age of Mythology is coming out in September. There's so many great games out there right now. So that's a big part of what I'm playing right now. So very, very cool stuff going on here, but that's gonna be it. I feel like we've talked a lot this episode. We will be doing, of course, our One Piece episode coming up. So thanks for anybody that's still tuning in and listening at the end of this. Of course, we are going to be doing the One Piece episode when Jaime rejoins us for our co-host adventures there. But thanks so much for tuning in, listening, watching, supporting the content over at NanMan's Nerd Corner. But that's gonna do it for this episode. I'll see you all next game.